It's time for Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock.
Believe me when I say we have a difficult time ahead of us. But if we are to be prepared for it, we must first shed our fear of it. I stand here without fear because I remember that I am here not because of the path that lies before me, but because of the path that lies behind me. I remember that for 100 years we have fought these machines. And after a century of war, I remember that which matters most. We are still here! Tonight, let us make them remember we are not afraid!
No fear, no fear, no fear here on Declare Your Independence with me, Ernest Hancock. My special guest, William Black, is going to help explain it to us. This is the one, I'm really looking forward to doing this because I'm old enough. In a couple of weeks, I'll be 50 years old. Let me tell you what that means. That means I was an adult when the SNL scandal happened in the late 80s, early 90s. That was all working itself out. And 1,000 people, hundreds and hundreds of people went to trial, and I think a lot of them got convicted. I don't know how many actually served time, but they were, brought down by the authorities. And what did they learn? They go, you know what? We need to change the law. We need to give us a little wiggle room. We need to have it in such a way that and put our guys in place of. Why you think Goldman Sachs has so many people in the administration? And in various regulatory agencies and so on. Well, you want to know how to rob a bank? William Black wrote the book. He tells you exactly how to do it. The best way to rob a bank is to own one. Well, I got you there, William.
Indeed.
William, you got to help me out. Let's get the Wayback Machine a little bit and go. And I was watching the Oscars. We were in and out doing a lot of different stuff, but I was watching them when they did the documentary Oscar, and I think did the introduction was Oprah Winfrey. And one thing that got us interested is our wives, me and a friend were out back doing whatever, and they said, "Oh, come in, you guys see this, and they paused it. And Oprah Winfrey had introduced him, and one of the first trailers for the movie had featured Banksy, and it was a lot of the artwork and graffiti artists and so on. And one of the pieces of art that we use a lot, the revolutionary guy throwing a bouquet of flowers instead of a Molotov cocktail, we use that a lot with the slogan, "We know the truth." So we were paying attention to this, but the winner was someone else. They won. It was Inside Job. It was about Wall Street. And when the guy got up to accept the award, he goes, "Look, man, I can't go on." He goes, here's the quote you had right here. It goes, "Forgive me. I must start by pointing out that 3 years after our horrific financial crisis caused by financial fraud, not a single financial executive has gone to jail, and that's wrong." Now, you remember, and in your book you talk about what happened in the SNL scandal, a fraction of what happened this time. Lots of people went to jail. Tell me about it, man.
So in the SNL scandal, the agency that was supposed to regulate savings and loans, long about 1984, 1985, decided that the crisis was being driven by frauds, and by frauds at the top of the food chain. So this is the CEOs using their seemingly legitimate savings and loans as devices to defraud. And so it said, our top priority is going to be putting these folks out of business and into receivership, and our second priority is going to be putting the CEOs in jail cells.
Okay, why? It was to, because we get bad guys to instill confidence in the system because we get the C's. I mean, what was their motivation?
Well, mostly because you had to deter not just this crisis, but future crises if you could.
Yeah, how'd that work out?
Yeah, well, it worked out a little bit, right? And I'll come to that in a moment. But it certainly worked out in terms of convictions, as you say. But here's where it started. It starts with criminal referrals, and only the agencies can do those successfully. They have the expertise, they have the resources, and so a criminal referral in our day might be 25 to 30 pages long, and it might have 200 to 300 pages of attachments, laying out, here's how the fraud occurred, here are the key witnesses, all those good types of things. We made well over 10,000 criminal referrals.
Okay, we who?
We, the Federal Home Loan Bank Board and the Office of Thrift Supervision, the successor federal agency. So this is the federal agency.
Okay.
Right? In the current crisis, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency and the Office of Thrift Supervision, which are the two places we have numbers for, made 0 criminal referrals.
Okay, and as compared in the SNL, how many criminal referrals were there? You said 10,000?
Well over 10,000.
Okay, and now we have, and let me count on both hands, none, right?
None.
Okay, so why?
Well, why is because you now have regulators who don't believe that they should regulate, and who actually believe that fraud is not possible in securities markets. I mean, this is so bizarre that you couldn't believe it, except that they actually said it and put it in writing in some cases. So,
okay, well, define that. When they say fraud is not possible in securities markets, I'm thinking that, I lean that they're right. I mean, nobody ever reads these things. I'm sure it said exactly how they were going to screw you, and they did it anyway.
Yeah, no.
All right, well, help me out here.
Actually, some people do read them. So, the people who said these things are also, like us, old enough to know better. So, most famously, Alan Greenspan said this. And he was the principal anti-regulator who refused to use the authority to regulate the mortgage bankers who did about 2/3 of the liar's loans, even though his colleagues begged him to do it, even though the FBI and his own staff warned him about the coming crises. So the FBI, for example, publicly warned in House testimony in September 2004. That's the one thing I thought that the producers of Inside Job got wrong by emphasizing the date 2008 and saying, it's 3 years later. In September 2004, over 6 years ago, the FBI testified in front of the House and said there was an epidemic of mortgage fraud, that's their words, and predicted that it would cause a financial crisis, their words, if it were not stopped, which it obviously was not. So Alan Greenspan goes all the way back to the SNL days because Charles Keating, the most notorious of the SNL frauds,
from here in Arizona,
yes, used Alan Greenspan, then in the private sector as a consultant, economic consultant, to recruit the 5 senators who would become known as the Keating Five, including both of Arizona's then senators,
DeConcini and McCain.
Right? And then Greenspan sent a letter to our agency saying that we should allow Lincoln Savings to do massive amounts of direct investments because it, quote, posed no foreseeable risk of loss, unquote, to the insurance fund. Well, close. It was just turned out to be the most expensive S&L failure of all time. In fact, it was the most expensive bank failure of all time until this crisis. Well, so these guys knew better, and Fischel, who became the dean of the University of Chicago Law School, wrote famously that a rule against fraud is not necessary or even particularly important. Okay? Think how radical that is. You don't need laws. You don't need rules. You don't need the Securities and Exchange Commission. You don't even need civil suits. Fraud's impossible.
All right, when we come back, you see where we're going with this here on Declare Your Independence with me, Ernest Hancock, and William Black, the author of The Best Way to Rob a Bank is to Own One. Yeah, we're gonna learn a lot. I'm gonna walk it through. I'm gonna understand it. If dumb old me can understand it, and I bet you can too. We'll be right back with William Black in just a little bit.